Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sideline Shenanigans Podcast today with Jacob Maggard,
Dalton Phillips.
and we're going to open up with the old Mountain Dew segment, baby. The Mountain Dew Pick'em segment. Rocking out with the old Mountain Dew Spark. Dalton got me on the
I've got a
raspberry
voltage
lemonade.
this week.
Dalton, tell him how is it?
Let's give it a try. That's pretty good. It's the first time ever trying it. He put me
I'm
on that
telling
one. I
you.
kind of put him on that one. So I
Yeah,
mean,
this
it's
is
pretty
good. This is
good. I'm not
good.
gonna lie.
This is good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
All right. Fun little opener there. We got some good games this week. This is one of those weeks where if you look at the schedule, if you're just a casual college football fan, you don't see Georgia, Alabama, you don't see those games on the schedule, you would think, okay, this is not the greatest week ever. But when you really look at it, there's a lot of very important
Yep.
games that I mean they don't show up on the schedule and people are not looking at them, but they're fun games. Like we have some good games here that are going to be fun to pick. And I guess just diving right into it. I mean, starting out with a pretty fun one here. We have a UNLV team that has a super fun story around them right now because they just lost their quarterback in Matthew Sluka. He had a dispute with the university. He says he was only paid $3,000 out of $100,000 that they were offering him or told him that they would pay, and the university doubles down and says no, we paid him that, and he wanted 100,000 more, and we're not going to give him more money. So just crazy situation. I mean, and then on the Syracuse side of things, 3-1 right now, looking to obviously get a huge win right here. This will put them in talks to be ranked over a top 25 team that is a pretty good UNLV team. Again, looking at the stats, as you can see, Sluka was their leading passer and their leading rusher. So this is a guy that is not easy to replace, but Haj Malik Williams has done as good of a job as you could ask somebody to do coming in to replace him. They go out there and they beat a pretty good Fresno State team 59-14. Haj Malik Williams goes for 189 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game in the air. He also runs for 120 yards on the
Yep.
ground. He's a very dynamic runner, and that truthfully just plays right into the system that they already had in place. So they didn't lose a whole lot to have to replace. On the other side, as you can see, Kyle McCord, we know him as the Ohio State transfer. He is a statue in the pocket. He's going to stand there and he's going to dice you up, but he is good at doing what he does. I mean, as you can tell, 1,400 yards in the year, 14 touchdowns. Like to see him tone it back on the interceptions, but he'll get experience here and there with this team. But I think he has found his spot with Syracuse. He fits in better there. I think people like him better on that team than they did at Ohio State. Rushing attacks for both teams are important and will play a big role in this game. Dalton, you want to talk about those?
Yeah, both teams have a pretty good running game with UNLV. They usually rely on the quarterback a little bit more, but they have two backs that get the ball mostly when the quarterback's not running the ball. It's Kylan James and Greg Burrell. They're both pretty good, and this is the fact that they don't get the ball as much as the quarterback. The quarterback's getting almost twice as much carries as both of them,
Mhm.
and I would like to see him touch the ball more because they're both pretty good. And if who knows what you can open the ball up a little bit, especially with a different quarterback in there. Maybe they're going to get the ball a bit more. This could be a big decider against this Syracuse team, which also can run the ball pretty good. Yeah, their running backs averaging 70, almost 75 yards a game. That's pretty dang good.
Yeah,
And he's getting 5.3 yards a carry. That's very good. So
yeah,
yeah,
and that's all you can ask for from the running game.
yeah,
And like you said, both teams is going to play a part in this game. And although they don't have these elite top tier rushers like some of these teams we'll talk about today do, it's important to both teams to get the run game going. Kyle McCord, as we talked about, wants to pass the ball a lot. He's got Trebor Pena, Arun Gadsden. I mean, that is two pretty good targets. And Gadsden coming into the season was one of those top tier tight ends. On the other side, I mean, if we're talking about a new guy coming in, transfers in from Campbell, was really good at Campbell. He's playing in his first big time college football this year with UNLV. Hosmalik Williams has a super target to throw to in Ricky White. 20 receptions, 253 yards, 5 touchdowns. And last week he was starting to get him the ball more. It almost looked like Sluka wasn't using his best target in Ricky White. And Sluka was struggling through those first couple games. So it was good for the offense. White was getting the ball more and the ball just flowed. 59 points last week. This will open up the week on Friday. It'll be a super fun game. I mean, a lot of people will want to watch this one. It comes on at 9 o'clock. So, I mean, you could tune in and finish out your night with this
this
football
is when
game.
you want. This is when you watch before you go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Going to make a pick in it. I'm an ACC guy. I like Syracuse. But to me, I just think UNLV has a chip on their shoulder. They're playing without their
Yep.
guy. He leaves the university and he's like, "You're losing me. How are you going to play without me?" And they just said, "We found your replacement, and he's pretty
He's
daggone good."
better. Yeah, if not better.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm taking UNLV this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go UNLV there. I like how they play in the Raiders Stadium over there. That's a big old stadium to fill out, and it'd be pretty cool if they get close to it.
Next game here. This is a big one. SMU traveling to Louisville. Both teams want to know in the conference. It's going to be important in conference play who wins this football game. Louisville trying to bounce back after a loss to Notre Dame last week. And of course, SMU, who struggled to start the year and made a change. That's the big talking point here. Kevin Jennings steps in at quarterback for Preston Stone, who a lot of people thought was going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC this year. He wasn't it. Through the first 3 games, they had struggled to beat opponents that they were heavily favored over. Kevin Jennings, since stepping in, 733 yards, 6 touchdowns, and a pick. That's pretty consistent play from the guy that wasn't, supposed to be your star quarterback coming into the year. He's played well. And then, of course, on the other side for Louisville, Tyler Shaw. He's been awesome this year. 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, only thrown 1 pick. He's very good at protecting the ball. And, I mean, it's helped him by his running game. Dalton, if you want to talk about both of these teams' running game.
Yeah, SMU might have one of the best running backs in the country, and that'd be in Brashard Smith. He is crazy.
Mhm.
He's averaging 7.3 yards a carry, which is insane. 509 yards on the year in 5 games. That's over 100 yards a game. And if you're rushing for over 100 yards a game, you're nothing to be messed with. And on the other side of the ball, you have Isaac Brown, which I would like to see him get the ball more because he's averaging over 6 yards a carry. I mean, right at 6 yards a carry. And you feed the guy the ball more, he's going to be up there with the leading rushers in the country. But I mean, they have a good passing attack there too. So I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah. The receiving game for both teams is important, but if you look at Louisville's side, they're the team to talk about with the
Yeah.
superstar. Ja'Cory Brooks has stood out as a deep ball threat in multiple games this year. He scored on long touchdowns on just making plays. Now, they didn't have him last week as much against Notre Dame. Notre Dame did a better job at shutting him down. But an SMU team, they don't have the kind of defense that Notre Dame has, so we'll see what Ja'Cory Brooks can do against them. And then, of course, for SMU, Kevin Jennings has found his target in RJ Maryland. As you can see, 16 catches for 221 yards, 3 touchdowns. Again, going to make a pick here. Not an easy one, but it's important in ACC play. I think it's one of those games where Louisville has to bounce back here if they want to say they're competitors in the ACC. They have to. Because if you fall behind the teams like Miami and like Clemson early on like this, it's going to be hard to dig yourself back out of that hole. So for that reason alone, I'm going to take Louisville, but this is a close one to me. But I'm taking Louisville here at home.
I'm gonna go SMU. I've always had a little kind of attachment to them. I thought they were kind of cool back in the day. I'm gonna go SMU here.
Next game here. This is another big one in conference play. You have A&M and you have Missouri. This is 2 ranked football teams. A&M has started out 2-0 in conference play, which is great for them. Missouri starting out 1-0 in conference play, but has looked shaky in some games here and there. Looking at the stats, of course, Missouri has Brady Cook. We've talked about him and how he is supposed to be one of the better quarterbacks in the country. He has played well to this point, but he's not played phenomenal football. They're going to need phenomenal football to beat this Texas A&M team because they do have a good defense. On the other side, Marcel Reed, he's kind of the story for them. He steps in at quarterback, and they have looked much better. I mean, Connor Wegman didn't look anything like a top-tier quarterback. Marcel Reed has looked good at quarterback, as you can tell by looking at his stats. 585 yards, 6 touchdowns, and he hasn't turned the ball over yet, which is awesome, and especially coming into SEC play where you have to protect the ball. Dalton, if you want to talk about this run game, it's awesome for both teams.
Both teams are great SEC run teams. Nate Noel is a absolute beast. He runs the ball hard, does what he's supposed to. And on the other side for Texas A&M, they have Le'Veon Moss. He does what he's supposed to with the ball. He has 76 carries on the year, and he just does what he needs to do to win ball games, and that's what you need as a out of a running back.
Yeah, both teams like to pound the rock. As you can see, almost 70 carries for Noel, over 70 carries for Moss. Of course, they're both important to their teams. I mean, and they're the lead backs. They're the guys that get the carries. Some teams we've talked about have split backfields. These teams rely on their 2 lead backs. They also rely on their receiving course. Missouri, as we talked about coming into the year, has one of the better receiving cores, and Theo Weiss has stepped up to be a superstar. And then they obviously have Luther Burden, who a lot of people think is one of the best receivers in the country. For the other side, Texas A&M, Cyrus Allen, Marcel Reed has found him a lot, and he's found a connection with Cyrus Allen. Only 11 catches for 203 yards. So the dude he's making plays when he gets the ball in his hand. So for them, they need to see Cyrus Allen get the ball just a little bit more. Going to make a pick in this one. Missouri traveling to Texas A&M. Not an easy game. Of course, A&M, Kyle Field, they're back home after they played in the Southwest Classic last week, which is an important game for them. And Missouri coming off a couple weeks where they have struggled, but they've got wins. All that matters is you get those wins. I'm going to take Missouri on the road, but I am not super confident in this game. Missouri, to me, has looked shaky at times. But I'm just going to say, in my opinion, I think Missouri will handle this game and get out of here with a win. but I don't know if Missouri is a top 10 football team. They've scared me at times.
I don't think Missouri is a top 10 football team. I'm going to be completely honest. Like they've just not looked like a top 10 football team to me. And I'm going to go with Texas A&M here. It's hard to play at Kyle Field.
Mm.
It's up there with the loudest stadium environments in the country, and they're going to show out, and I think they're going to win the ball game here.
Next game here, another big one in conference play. Ole Miss coming off a loss to Kentucky where they just couldn't get things going on offense. Kentucky's defense is definitely very good, but we're talking about a South Carolina team that also has a great defense. They are amazing at getting pressure on the quarterback. Two edge rushers that are likely NFL guys in their future, and it's just elite pass rush. I mean, that's what you have to have if you're going to beat a team like Ole Miss who likes to step back and throw the ball a ton. Looking at the stats, Jackson Dart, we know how good he is. I mean, 1,800 yards on the year already. That's phenomenal. 13 touchdowns, only the 2 picks. Does protect the ball pretty well. Has scored a lot of touchdowns. On the other side, Lenore Sellers. He is what matters for this offense. In general, them without Lenore Sellers, they are nothing. Them with Lenore Sellers, they're pretty daggone good. They had LSU on the ropes. He gets hurt, they lose. With Lenore Sellers, this team is scary. He can run the ball. He can run the ball well, and he does throw the ball well. He's only a freshman, but he's doing his job as a freshman to elevate the play of this team. And then the running game is important for both teams. Don't if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, South Carolina behind Rocket Sanders it's a good team, but with North Sellers, him back, they're a great team in my opinion because look what they do that LSU game with both of them there. Because Rocket Sanders hasn't been able to do as well because the quarterback Lenore Sellers being gone. With him being gone, they've not been able to run the ball that great at all. And on the other side, you have Ole Miss Henry Paris Jr. He's averaging almost 7 yards a carry, that's another great running back in the country. Both teams can run the ball well. I would just like to see South Carolina with their quarterback coming back to be able to run the ball even better.
Looking at the receivers, I mean, Ole Miss receiver Trey Harris, he's unbelievable. I mean, 49 catches, 804 yards, 5 touchdowns, and there's all these theories and questions. Is he inflating his stats against teams he plays against? I'm going to be completely honest. He has 150 more yards than the next closest guy to him. Yeah, he might inflate his stats, but I don't think he's added 200 yards inflating stats.
No.
So he's still a top tier receiver in the country currently. Inflating stats or not, he played well against Kentucky, and he's not the reason they lost. On the other side, South Carolina spreads the ball around a lot. As you can see, their leading receiver only has 11 catches for 159 yards. They truthfully need to pass the ball a little bit better, but part of that problem has been Sellers not being healthy. When he is healthy, they pass better. Looking to make a pick here. Ole Miss traveling to South Carolina. South Carolina is not an easy place to play. They've actually kind of gained a reputation of being a tough place to play in the SEC, especially over the past couple of years. Ole Miss needs to bounce back after this game where they just struggled completely on offense. It was rough. They couldn't get anything going. I think South Carolina wins this one at home. I think, to me, Lane Kiffin he's right there. He's on the verge of taking that Florida job, in my opinion. I mean, I shouldn't say that the job will be open right now, but Florida is not very good, and coaching is an issue that needs to be addressed there, and there's just so many rumors circulating around Kiffin wanting to go to Florida. So I think Ole Miss loses this one, and that pretty much takes them out of the conversation of being one of the top teams in the country.
Yeah, I'm going to go with South Carolina too. That's a hard place to play at and down there in South Carolina, and they've played good with tough teams like LSU. I can see them playing good against this Ole Miss team. I'm going to go South Carolina there.
Next game here. This is a big one in conference play. Again, we're obviously seeing a lot of conference matchups. It's that time of year where the conferences really start digging in and playing each other. Iowa traveling to Ohio State. This Iowa football team is a touch different than past Iowa football teams. Their offense is still not phenomenal, but they do a little bit better at scoring points. They've been a little more efficient. And so the joke of their best playing being their punter is not as accurate this year, but their punter is still extremely important. On the other side, Ohio State, of course, we know they're a juggernaut, one of the best teams in the country. Looking at stats, Cade McNamara, he needs to play better than he has played, just being completely realistic about it. And if he doesn't play better against Ohio State, they will get the doors blown off. But if he does play good enough to keep them in the game passing-wise, maybe, 180, 200 yards, consistent, no turnovers, they hang around in it. On the other side, Will Howard, transfer quarterback, we've talked about the effects he has on this Ohio State football team. And as you can tell, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and he's obviously created a pretty good offense, and Ohio State's been rolling. Dalton, if you want to talk about their run game for both teams.
Yeah, Iowa has the second best running back in the country. I wouldn't say second best, but he's second lead in the rushing yards.
Yes, I don't think he's second best talent-wise, But what he does his job, and Iowa
He
is
does what Iowa needs to do, and they run the ball. So he runs the ball and he does it good, and that helps him play in good games against especially a team like Ohio State that has two great running backs, that in Trayvon Henderson and Judkins. They're both crazy good, and having one back on the other side rushing for that good and everything like that, it's going to be a close ball game in my opinion because of how the rushing attack both are really good.
Johnson, a lot of media coverage about him and talking about how he's kind of burst onto the scene. He wasn't a guy that was expected to be this great, and he's been phenomenal. He does obviously it helps. He's in a favorable offense to run the ball, but he needs his respect. 685 yards, 9 touchdowns. That's not easy to come across, and no matter who you are, look at Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State. The dude was last year's Doak Walker winner, a superstar player. He's struggling. So anybody can struggle, superstar talent or not. So for him to almost be at 700 yards in the year through 4 games is very impressive. Looking at receiving wise, for Iowa, obviously we know Iowa. They don't throw the ball a ton, but Jacob Gill has been their lead receiver with 13 catches, 145 yards. On the other side, Ohio State, they are disgusting. We talked about it in the recap and analysis of when they played Michigan State. The receiving core is filthy. It is 1 through 4 guys that are probably going to make the NFL. And the top 2 are first round picks. And, Jeremiah Smith, one of the best freshman receivers I've ever laid eyes on. And we also have another guy in the country that's great, Ryan Williams. But Jeremiah Smith, to me, is better. And then Emeka Egbuka, who is, barring injury last year, him and Marvin Harrison would have been the best duo of receivers we'd seen since Chase and Jefferson. So it's an unbelievable receiving core. Going to make a pick here. I think Ohio State will win this football game. It's a home game for them. I think it will be close, however, because Iowa plays a game and a brand of football that will keep the game close. But I think Ohio State comes out on top with the elite receiving threats.
Yeah, I'm going to go Ohio State too because this Ohio State team has so many athletes across the board. They're outstanding. They're very good.
Yeah.
But I was going to keep it close with them, I think, because of how good they are running the ball and controlling clock.
Next game here, Rutgers traveling to play Nebraska. Nebraska, of course, has, Dylan Raiola, the Patrick Mahomes copycat. We haven't talked about him in a week or two. And then on the other side, Rutgers, top-tier running attack, and have actually had better quarterback play than a lot of people expected out of them. Looking at stats, Ethan Kaliakmanis, 761, 7 touchdowns, interception. He's actually played a lot better this year than he did last year, and was kind of a thing coming into the season was Rutgers, can they get their passing game going because they're going to have an elite rushing attack. And then, of course, for Nebraska, Dylan Raiola, he's been great this year as a freshman. 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And, of course, both teams have good running games. Dalton, if you want to talk about them.
Yeah, Kyle Monangai is one of the best guys I've ever watched in person.
Mm.
I love watching in that Tech game, and he ran the ball hard. He did. And he shows it. He's got almost 600 rushing yards on the year. That's insane within 4 games. For the other team, Dowdle, he's a good running back. He's just not really getting started. But you also have Johnson and Johnson too. That was my favorite little thing there. You got the helping hands. 3 running backs that are pretty good there at Nebraska. But Rutgers' run game just a little bit better, obviously, because you have a stud like Monangai.
Yeah. We talk about Nebraska with Johnson and Johnson, of course. Ramir Johnson, Emmett Johnson, they both get the ball a lot, and both those backs are also important in their system. Dante Dowdle, of course, being the star there. And then receiving wise, Demir Miller has been the guy for Rutgers, and he had a pretty big game against Tech. I watched him do that against us. 15 catches, 227 and a touchdown. On the other side, we've talked about Isaiah Nayer. He's awesome for Nebraska. It's been Raiola's best target to go to, especially in the red zone, as you can tell with 4 touchdowns on the year. Going to make a pick here. It's a game where Nebraska's home field advantage is going to play a big role. They pack out the stadium. I think they've sold out, I don't know how many games in a row. It's a ton of games in a row. And Rutgers, a team that was very underrated coming into the year, and they're extremely well coached. For me to make the pick, I think Rutgers will go in here, and I think they'll win.
Yeah, I'm going to go Rutgers here too. I like that Rutgers football team. They're good. I think they're a top 25 team for sure.
Yeah.
And I want to see them come here and win. I think they will be ranked after this week.
Next game here, Michigan traveling to Washington. We have a national championship rematch. Now, it's obviously not as fun as the national championship was when it comes to talent on both sides of the ball. Both teams lost a lot. And we're kind of seeing both teams trying to struggle to recover from what they lost to the NFL. Michigan, Davis Warren was, of course, the guy at the beginning of the year. He has since then been benched. And Alex Orji has taken over as their quarterback. He is very run-heavy. He's not a pass-first guy at all. On the other side, for Washington, Will Rogers has 1,354 yards, 10 touchdowns, no picks. That is very good football from a quarterback. He's consistent. He's not turning the ball over, and he's giving his guys chances to make plays. Dalton, if you want to talk about the run games, as they are very good for both teams.
Yes. Khalil Mullings, he's a absolute stud there at Michigan, and he's one of the top running backs in the country. You have two great running backs here. They're both probably top 10 running backs in the country, in my opinion. And the other one being Jonah Coleman. Uh, he's a stud too, and it's going to be a great run game. Maybe one of the better run games of the year, in my opinion, because they both can run the ball very well. And not being like Washington last year, which threw the ball everywhere, they are relying more on the run game this year. And so is Michigan. Michigan is last year running the ball quite a bit, but they're still running the ball because they don't have a quarterback can pass the ball.
Yeah.
Orgy cannot pass the ball hardly at all, and you have to run the ball with him at quarterback.
Colston Loveland. I've said it time and time again. He is the best tight end in the country, in my opinion. I think he is a guy that will go first, second round of the NFL draft this year. 23 receptions is not enough through 5 football games when your passing game has struggled. Now, teams are probably bracketing him and probably double covering him a lot because he is clearly the lead target on the team. However, if it's me, I'm throwing that guy jump balls. I'm throwing him quick outs. I'm getting him the ball as much as possible. They didn't use him last week. He only had 4 catches for 40 yards. So if I'm Orgy, I have to know that I'm not an elite passer. I know I'm not an elite passer. I need to get the ball to my best player, my dynamic playmaker in Loveland. On the other side, of course, Boston, 30 catches, 412 yards. Rodgers obviously loves throwing to that guy, and he's playing well. 7 touchdowns through 5 games. To make a pick here, Michigan travels to Washington. Michigan has not looked unbeatable this year, and they're at 10 in the country. Washington, on the other hand, has 2 losses already. They need a bounce back win here if they want to have any chance at all of saying throw their name in the hat for a playoff spot. This is a big game for both teams. Michigan needs to get it done. I think they will get it done. I think Michigan just runs the ball like crazy in this game. I truthfully could see them having over 350 rushing yards when you combine Mullings, Edwards, and Alex Orgy running. So, yes, I'm taking Michigan with their running attack.
Yeah, I'm going to go Michigan also. Both teams losing their head coach last year, I think that affected them quite a bit last year, and it's showing a little because they both got lost on the year. It's not going to be nowhere near as a national championship caliber game, but I'm going to go Michigan here too because I don't think Washington can keep up with that rushing attack that happens at Michigan right now.
Next game here, we got Texas Tech traveling to Arizona. This should be a pretty fun one. Big 12 play. Both teams undefeated in the conference right now. Texas Tech looking for a big one over Arizona. Arizona, of course, looking to continue the hot streak that they've been on. Looking at the stats, Texas Tech quarterback Behren Morton, 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns through 5 games is awesome. He's playing really well right now. And then Noah Fifita, one of those guys that was talked about before the season started, is one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I really, truly don't think he showed what he can be, but he's picked it up a little bit. And, of course, they had the big win last week, so we'll see if he can continue doing that. Of course, you can see both running backs are awesome, and it's important for both teams. Dalton, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, Texas Tech, Taj Brooks, he has 550 yards on the year. That's outrageous. That's another great running back. This week's filled with running backs. I love it. I love watching the ball get ran down the field. I love that about football. Being an offensive lineman, obviously, I love just absolutely just beating the other team, and that's the best way to win football games, in my opinion. The other side of the ball, Quali Conley is an absolute stud. He does what he needs to do because you have a great passing attack there, Arizona. Even though they've struggled a little bit this year, you have an elite receiver, and I'll let you talk about him.
Yeah, of course, Tedero McMillan. I mean, this guy, in my opinion, I've stated it before, I'll keep saying it. He's the best receiver in college football.
Yep.
He's nasty, man. They have started to use him a little bit better here and there, but you can see, I mean, 29 catches for 503 yards, 4 touchdowns. This guy is unbelievable. He makes plays on most jump balls. If you throw the ball up, he usually comes down with it. And Fifita has figured out, hey, I got to go to that guy as much as possible. When I'm struggling, when I'm not making plays, just go to McMillan. Let him be the guy that just breaks the game open for you. On the other side, Texas Tech lead receiver Josh Kelly having also a pretty great year. 39 catches, 487 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that obviously comes from them having an elite passing attack. Texas Tech's offense is very good. If you look at those counting stats, quarterback and running back, that's almost 2,000 yards combined in their passing and rushing. I think this game is going to be super high scoring. If you want to make a pick in this game, Texas Tech traveling to Arizona. Of course, very important for both teams. Texas Tech looks to start 3-0 in the conference, would be 5-1 in the country. And, that's arguably a ranked football team and definitely will get talked to be one. Arizona, of course, wants to continue the hot streak. And I think Fifita has figured out that McMillan is his guy. McMillan is the superstar player and use him. use them against this team that doesn't have an amazing defense in Texas Tech, and I think Arizona does do that correctly in this game. I think Arizona comes out on top.
We're going to go Texas Tech. I think their offense is just very, very good. They spread the ball out good, and they run the ball really, really good. So I'm going to go Texas Tech.
I had a little bit of a technical difficulty here, so I'm gonna have to finish this out with Dalton. Hopefully, we can get things back to normal by Tuesday's video, but we'll figure that out. Next game here on the schedule, of course, we have Virginia Tech traveling to Stanford. Important game on the schedule because Tech needs to bounce back after a rough loss to a Miami team that, of course, that win would have set off the season and put them in pace to go 8-0 in the conference. I mean, that's the kind of game that you say, if we win that one, we're confident we can beat anybody. And as a team, it's got to be tough because it's a game you thought you had won on a play that, just didn't go your way. And you kind of have to clear that off your mind and focus on the next opponent because Stanford is definitely not a joke this year. Their quarterback situation, looking at Stanford, Ashton Daniels, he is injured. Now, they don't have a firm stand on what he's going to do for this game. They don't know if he's going to play. The coach lists him as questionable, but they do have a backup, and he can step in and play. He's played in quite a few games actually for Stanford. He's more of a running quarterback they put in with sets to carry the ball. He had 7 rushing touchdowns in his career so far there. So not a whole lot of passing attempts. I think he had around 30 completions total in 17 games. So we'll see what he can do. And then, of course, on the other side, Kyron Drones played well in his last game. Definitely the best game he's played all year. Need continued success from him. Looking at the running game for both teams, Daniels is definitely the key to the run game, especially because they run a lot of plays where he would step back, fake the pass, QB draw, and go. And so their offense is definitely going to be different without him. Looking at the other side, of course, Tootin, as you can see on the season, 86 carries, 532 yards, 8 touchdowns. Been one of the best backs in the country over the last 4 weeks. Obviously had the rough start to the year with only 38 yards against Vanderbilt, but over 100 in the last 4 games. And really, truly just got to keep the ball on the ground with him. And this game is just one of those games where he can dominate and take over, and Tech's offense can flow. Of course, looking at the receiving stats, we know Stanford has one of the best receivers in the country in Alec Aominer. He's been amazing, and we'll kind of see what Lamson can do to get him the ball because that's maybe his outlet, his source to go to for yards and big plays. On the other side, of course, receiving for Virginia Tech, they're hoping to have Jennings play this week, but again, still kind of questionable and not 100% sure. And then, of course, other receivers like Jalen Lane and then the Gosnell brothers have both been massive in place of him. And that's kind of the guys that Drones just has to keep going to. Making a pick in this one. Tech doesn't going to have an easy time traveling here because they just had to go to Miami. Now they've got to take a long flight to Stanford with the new wrinkle in the schedule, of course, with them joining the ACC. I am, however, very confident in the team this week. Hopefully you can take some of that anger out from losing to Miami on Stanford, and they're weakened now without their quarterback. So I think Tech will take this one pretty big on the road. Next game here, Tennessee travels to Arkansas. Not an easy one. Arkansas coming off a pretty tough loss. Close game where they could have had a ranked win if they got it. And then, of course, Tennessee's been rolling. Just had a bye week. Gets 2 weeks to plan for Arkansas. Looking at the stats, Nico Imaliava has been as good as you can ask a guy to be in his redshirt freshman season. 892 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, only the 2 picks. Coach Heupel said that they slowed the game down on purpose last game because of the issues in blocking for him. Of course, on the other side, Arkansas, Taylor Green, he's been awesome this year, doing more than they really expected him to do in the passing game. Would like to see him tone it down on interceptions, though. 5 through 5 games is, of course, rough. You don't want to see a guy turn the ball over at least once a game. And it's really just comes down to his decision-making. He will get out of the pocket, and sometimes he makes flashy plays, but sometimes he just makes poor decisions, and that results in turnovers. Looking at the running game in general for both teams, Tennessee did have one of the best rushing attacks in the country going into the bye, and I assume that coming out of it, they'll be the same way. Dylan Sampson is having a phenomenal season with 69 carries, 449 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And then, of course, they have freshman Deshaun Bishop, who has also got over 200 yards in the year and is rushing for nearly 8 yards per carry. So they just have a dynamic run game, which you could say the same for Arkansas. Quarterback Taylor Green and then running back Jaquindon Jackson, they both run really well. And they have a playbook that's designed around getting both of them the ball as much as they can and just letting playmakers go. Looking at the receiving game for both teams, Tennessee has spread the ball around a lot. Of course, a lot of people thought Squirrel White would be their lead guy this year. He's actually ended up being the 4th leading receiver on the team. And if he can start picking it up, they really will get deadly in the passing attack. And then on the other side, it's a one-man show for Arkansas. Armstrong is their lead receiver, 29 catches for 420 yards. Doesn't have a touchdown yet on the year, but again, that's on Green finding him in the end zone. For Arkansas to win this game, they have to have him going, and they have to have Green just making good decisions because Tennessee's D-line will be all over him. And it's going to be about, does he panic in those situations or can he make plays? To make a pick, I think Tennessee is just, they're very well coached. Heupel knows what he's doing on offense, and truly their defensive line is going to wreak havoc. And it's going to be about, can Green make the right decisions? And I just don't know if he can. And so it's going to be an interesting dynamic for them. I think Tennessee will end up winning this one, and I think it will get ugly. But I think Arkansas will keep it close for a half, and Tennessee will just prove how good they are in the second half. That'll wrap it up for this week, everybody. A bunch of fun games on the schedule here. Like I said before, if people going into this week don't see, a big game like Alabama and Georgia, they might not think this week is as good as some other weeks, but there's a lot of games that are kind of hidden in the schedule and you really have to actually look for to find. And I'm excited for some of these matchups to play out. Hopefully, like I said, we can get everything fixed with technical issues and we'll have Dalton back on Tuesday. But I appreciate everybody for coming and watching the videos. And if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Obviously, try to help boost the channel. And thank everybody for joining, and peace.